All right, I think we're good.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Love Fruit podcast. Today we have an amazing guest, a real legend in the raw food movement, and someone who's got so much experience to share with us in almost every aspect, not just the diet, but the side of gardening, the side of promoting the raw food diet, sharing information with others, educating people. Um, the equipment that's used has he's probably the number one expert in that kind of area, and that's John Kohler. John has an incredibly popular YouTube channel. In fact, he has a couple, Growing Your Greens, which is, I believe, one of the most successful YouTube channels around gardening, full stop, and especially organic gardening. And he also has the OK Raw YouTube channel, which is also incredibly popular. And he's been interviewed by many people. He's appeared on many stages. I believe he's even set up his own events in the past and contributed so much. So, John, is there anything else you'd like to say in introduction of yourself?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So first, Ronnie, I'd like to thank you for having this format. You know, when I'm driving in my car, I could have it search for raw food podcasts, raw vegan podcasts, and you're the only one that comes up. So I'm
Yeah,
so glad that, I could listen to good information, other raw food information while I'm traveling and driving out around. And you interview so many people. So I'm, number one, glad to be here, but also number two, glad you've interviewed so many people that actually maybe some of them I even haven't met in person and don't know what they're up to.
yeah,
Because one of the things I solidly believe is to become a better teacher, you need to become a better student. And whether you want to be a teacher or a student, I'm always out to learn new information to improve what I'm doing. I only got into my lifestyle because I almost lost my life when I was younger, and maybe we'll talk about that in a minute. And I've always learning, and even to this day, I'm researching microbiome and learning more about that to enhance my microbiome. And the other thing I'll say, Ronnie, is my diet, my raw food style diet that I do may not conform to anybody else's style or book or different kind of dogma or whatever. I do my own thing, and I'm never going to tell anybody that they need to change and do what I'm doing because I'm doing it better. I'm doing it best for me because I've been doing this now for 26 years. I started a raw food diet in 1995. And I also have a YouTube channel, Discount Juicers, where I actually compare and contrast all the best juicers and, more importantly now, vacuum blenders that allow you to maximize the nutrition in your food. And that's what I'm about. I'm like, how can I improve my raw food diet? I started back on a natural hygiene 80-10-10 style diet, actually before they even called it 80-10-10. And I've been learning and growing all the way along. Not to say that doesn't work. That could work great for some people if you implement it properly. I think it's being portrayed, the way it's portrayed in many times on YouTube is maybe not the best information because it leaves out certain important criteria, that get glossed over that really could cause you to fail in the long run. But yeah, so I've always tried to improve, and whether that's improving, the quality of my food by growing it, that's why I grow my own food, to have a higher quality food than money could buy and more varieties, or whether by processing it with the right equipment to have more nutrition. I'm all about, maximizing and how can I do the raw food diet the best in my view.
yeah.
Which may not agree with other people's, but it's just what I think based on science and my personal experience.
One thing I would say is you're definitely unique. You've got your own perspective coming from your vast experience, and you're one of the most enthusiastic people I would say out there, promoting this idea and sharing this with so many people. It's clear that this is, this comes from passion, a passion for you to help others. But I'm also aware that, you know, well, actually, firstly, before we get into when your health sort of fell apart a little bit, were you brought up on a normal diet or something a little bit different, or what was your kind of circumstances growing up?
Yeah, I mean, I wish I could say I'm vegan since birth or something like that, or plant-based since birth, but or raw since birth, but I can't. My parents basically fed us, pretty much standard American with a slant of healthy, because we shopped at a co-op. They had like a red shelf, yellow shelf, and orange shelf like cereal, so we could only get like the green shelf, which is like the Cheerios. We didn't get the Trix, the Cocoa Puffs, or all these other cereals that have a lot of sugar in them. We only got like granola, and And then my parents got like, you know, we got like, instead of candy bars, I got like unsulfured. So it was really cool. Unsulfured apricots, which were my favorite kind of snack as a child. Although my parents' diet, you know, we made a lot of at-home food because we didn't eat out a lot because my parents weren't like super rich. But we did go out, you know, to McDonald's and other fast food places. But in general, you know, my parents tried to make food at home from like scratch. That being said, you know, it contained, looking back at it, contained far too much meat and not enough fruits and vegetables, especially in their raw form, unfortunately. Although they did have a juicer when I was a kid, and then my mom, they introduced me to juicing as a young child, which I did do for a little bit, but then, you know, got out of it.
Interesting. I do want to talk to you about juicing a little later. Obviously, you're
Sure.
a real expert with that, but I know that that you came to raw foods, I believe, through a very serious health condition that happened to your health situation. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Sure, Ronnie. So what happened to me was I had spinal meningitis, and that's, you know, I believe I had the viral version, and I was hospitalized. I literally passed out. My parents had to actually just drive an hour to get me at my house and then take me to the hospital. And I was just basically incapacitated. And I remember just waking up in the hospital with these IVs stuck in me. And I'm like, what's going on? And I had no clue what was going on. And I'm like, doctor, when am I going to get out of here? Because like my whole mentality was like, if you go to the doctors, you get sick, they make you better, and then you leave. And they're like, the doctor's like, you might not make it out of here. You know, you have spinal meningitis, it could take your life. And I'm like, thought about it like, wow, this is not a good situation. This is not supposed to happen for me being this young. And, you know, I got to figure out, like, if I get out of here, I got to figure out why this happened and not prevent it. But then the other thing, and I had a real realization change of like, you know, what's important to me. Like, even if I had all the money in the world, could I write the check, Mr. Doctor, $1 million, $1 billion, not void unless John walks out of here alive. Like, money would do me no good. The richest guy in Las Vegas, Sheldon Adelson, you know, he owned all these casino chains, the Sands Corporation, billionaire, maybe gazillionaire. I don't even know how much money, trillionaire. I mean, he just lost his life a year ago or whatever of cancer. He mastered how to make money, which is unfortunately, in my opinion, what many people focus on in our society. I just want to make a lot of money, but they lose their health. You know, I've been focusing on since that time because I learned that money means nothing. It means shit. I mean, yes, we need money to get by in life, but it means nothing if you don't have your health. If you're going to your job that you hate just to get money and you're sacrificing your health, you're waking up with an alarm every day because you have to be your job to get paid, but your body is telling you, you need to sleep in, John. Don't wake up with an alarm. You've all felt like that. I felt like that when I used to work for somebody, right? I worked for my own boss. I set my own hours. I wake up. That's why it's a little bit difficult to get connected with Ronnie on the other side of the world, as does he. You know, but I'm glad to be here today, you know, so that's like, I take my health as a most priority as I can. I'm not perfect. I'm never going to say I'm perfect. I'm still learning and growing on a daily basis. But I want you guys that are listening or watching this to take your health more seriously. And it's not about money, you know, and I learned that. So I was glad to learn that like it shifted my life focus from like wanting to get rich and make a lot of money to having the freedom to do what I want, having the freedom to take care of myself, to take care of my health. I invest a lot of time to grow my own food, to prepare my own food in the best ways possible, to eat healthy, raw foods, you know, and so that I could have better health. Because when I got out of the hospital, I asked the doctor, like, Mr. Doctor, why did I get sick in the first place? Like all my buddies, you know, were hanging out with me and like none of them got the same disease that's like communicable. So actually the health department had to come out and interview me. I mean, it was like a thing like COVID, you know, it was like crazy these days. Like this is a meningitis could be spread and you could have an outbreak and it could not be good. But what he told me is this, he's like, John, people have an immune system and normally their immune system could fight this off. And it's just like a common cold to them and they don't get affected like you did, where you almost lost your life, but you have a weak immune system that we've identified because of your genes, which is what they blamed it on. Now, at that time, I was like, oh my gosh, my genes are messed up. I'm screwed. Because he's like, you could get a reoccurrence or you could get another disease in the future. You could be back here and you could lose your life. And then that was like, you know, talk about carrot and stick. You know, that was really a big motivator to me. Like, wow, I could lose my life if I don't straighten up and fly right. But he's like, oh, we could give you a vaccination to like, maybe you won't get in the future. I'm I'm like, no, I don't want your vaccination. You know, I'm going to figure this out on my own. It took me a little bit, but basically, I learned that, you know, it's all about so I may have some genes that aren't like totally good, but here's the thing I've learned, you know, since then, because I didn't know this at that point, is that, you know, there's this whole system of epigenetics, you know, and epigenetics is basically that your genes load the gun, but your environment pulls the trigger, you know. Like a gun can be a great thing to have. I have one actually under my bed, you know, which is good to have. But if you pull the trigger, you know, and you're pointing your head, you're going to blow yourself up, right? It's not good. So don't pull the trigger, you know, with your environmental factors. And one of the biggest of which is your diet and what you are specifically eating, right? So I learned that I needed to really dial in my environment, mainly start with diet first and have expanded to many other areas besides that, so that I could have a loaded gun, which is safe and good to have around, but I'm never going to pull the trigger because my immune system's not going to be overactive. I'm going to eat all these phytonutrients and plenty of different types of fiber so that I could be as healthy as possible. And, you know, my genes could change. I mean, there's people that are raw foods that their eye colors change, but isn't eye color controlled by your genes? Well, you know, once again, your genes are, you know, loading the gun, but then, you know, your diet pulls the trigger. So many things to change if you make the right, you know, environmental dietary changes and otherwise, Ronnie.
Amazing, man. I know that meningitis is very, very serious and can really harm people very badly. So it's obviously, as you're saying, is I think you said about higher powers helped you out in that situation.
That's the only reason why I'm here today, man. So I'm so glad, you know, because I prayed. And, you know, also, that's the other reason why I'm so passionate about this, Ronnie, is because, you know, when I was in the hospital, I'm like, okay, so if money is not my guiding factor in life, you know, what should be my guiding factor? Well, my guiding factor is health. But the other thing is, like, I promise, like, if I get out of here, I will share what I've learned with others to make a difference on the planet and to, like, literally serve thy fellow man. I mean, it is said in many religions, you know, live in service. And so my videos that I produce 3 a week now for like literally the last 11 years are me living in service to help others. Now, some of my videos get viewed a lot, some of them don't get viewed so much, but, you know, to me, I always have valuable information that I believe, if applied, could make a positive difference in a person's life.
Yeah, and I'm sure that there's so many people that thank you for that. And so here's the picture I'm getting. You've come out of the hospital, you're kind of college age, your life's been shifted a little bit. I'm guessing you're looking to change things and you're looking to improve your health, but you don't have the information yet. So how did you start to figure out, what were the first steps you took forward in changing your diet and lifestyle, and what was working for you?
Yeah, so that's the challenging part. Yeah, there's no internet back then. You know, there's books, there's health food stores, and there's infomercials. So I knew I needed to change, but I didn't exactly know what to do. So luckily I was up late night and I saw a Juice Man infomercial on the TV, and I heard the Juice Man say the key words that I needed to hear. And he said, juicing can build your immune system in the video, in his infomercial. And I'm like, okay, I got to build my immune system. I know that is, you know, a opportunity I have for improvement. And so I ordered the juicer, got the juicer. With this juicer, he gave 6 cassette tapes. So that dates me a little bit. And one of the cassette tapes, I think is the first or second one, he says, and when I heard this the first time, I was like, whoa, this guy's whacked out. But he says, the one thing that prematurely ages you faster than anything else is cooked foods. Don't put cooked foods in your body. Now, I don't know if that's completely accurate as I would think now, but I would definitely say it's mostly entirely accurate that most cooked foods, not all, will definitely severely age you faster than anything else. Especially fried foods will absolutely age you faster than anything else you could possibly eat. Don't put fried foods in your body or any other highly processed foods, in my opinion. But when I heard that at first, I'm like, this guy's a whack job. But guess what? He planted the seed in my head about this raw food thing that I wasn't ready to accept at that time. But I was going to do the juicing, and little announced to me that, guess what? Juicing, it's all raw foods. So I was juicing, like, for breakfast. I wouldn't eat breakfast. I just juice. I I think I was still eating chicken at that point, and then I'd have an afternoon juice and then eat, try to eat vegetables and stuff and fruits back then. But I was that's when I kind of started this. And then later on, one thing led to another. I was shopping at a health food store and I found a book called Cleanse and Purify Thyself by Dr. Richard Anderson, which talked about going on a colon cleanse and psyllium bentonite shakes and these herbs and all this stuff and cleansing your colon. And in that book also, the guy talks about raw foods. And if you're going to go this cleanse and clean your body out of all these toxins, you should just eat raw foods after, because so you won't get toxic again after you do your cleansing. So I did this cleansing program. In the book, he says you could drink as much fresh juice on the cleanse as you want. I missed that part, so I drank as much fresh water. So basically, it was almost a water fast with water with herbs and stuff. So it wasn't exactly a water fast, but pretty close. But I really cleansed out and had some miraculous results. And I'm like, wow, if this cleanse did this, and if this Jay Cordage guy said go raw, and this guy said go raw, and I had some amazing results that my skin cleared up for the first time in my life, something that doctors could not do with all their medicines and drugs. I'm like, I need to live raw foods diet the rest of my life, which was scary as heck because I didn't know how to do it. I didn't know. I mean, I maybe met one person in my life that did it previous to that, Samson in Santa Rosa, California, that is still raw today. That dude inspires me because he was my first introduction before I even, heard about it from Jay Cordage, because I went to a Thanksgiving dinner with my girlfriend at the time, and they're eating all this raw food stuff. I tried it, but I was like, that raw food stuff, that's weird. Anyways, but then I'm like, this is what I got to do. So at that point, I'm like, you know what? This is what I got to do for my health. If I want to live, I have to live raw. And I never looked back. And since then, Ronnie, I've just been trying to increase and improve what I'm doing, over time, because, there's a lot of different raw food books out there, and each of them have their own philosophy. And I think each philosophy is great, and each philosophy can work if implemented properly. The challenge is that in many cases, especially if somebody's just watching YouTube videos for their knowledge or reading websites, there's critical components of certain, programs that are left out, that are maybe put to the wayside, and then the system doesn't work properly. I've come up with my own way of eating that I believe to be the best for me. I'm never going to say it's going to be the best for everybody, but I share what I do in case somebody wants to learn from all my research and trials and tribulations of trying the different kind of raw foods diet, whether that's a higher fruit diet. I didn't really do a higher fat diet. I did some really low fat diets and stuff, but I've come up to what I've come up with now based on evidence based. So I'm like looking at a lot of science. I mean, when I'm bored, I'm looking at different published studies, but also my experience, and also the experience I've seen from so many other people I've met along my journey.
That's a really interesting little journey, and it's interesting as well that because there wasn't YouTube, because there wasn't the internet at the time, things like infomercials, secondhand bookstores were really what people were doing to get this information. And the interesting thing, the juice man, just to maybe talk about that a little bit, I think that he's a kind of fascinating character, and I don't know a great deal about him, but he obviously inspired a lot of people to start juicing. I believe that he was responsible for a massive increase in the amount of juicers that were bought and sold in the US. Did you ever meet him or know much about him? Or
Absolutely, Ronnie. So I definitely met him for sure. But yeah, I mean, he was probably the first major guy that brought juicing to the world, or at least to the US anyways, with his Juice Man infomercial that sold, I don't even know, millions of juicers, and inspired so many people. And Jay was a raw foodist, so I mean, he healed himself from cancer, basically is how he got into it, because of, like Norman Walker or the Gersons, and he healed himself and then found the raw food message. And, up until his 90s when he passed, I still know his wife, Linda Cordage. I keep in touch with her every now and then. And in his later years, we met, and he took me out to a lunch one time, and I was all raw. And then I was surprised when he wasn't ordering things that were raw at the restaurant there, at least they're vegan. And I was like, well, wait, this is my raw food, mentor guru, dude. And he's ordering some cooked stuff. I'm like, but I'm getting raw berries, because that's the only thing that this stupid restaurant has that they took me out to, because we were going to do some business things that never worked out, which is probably for the better. he has an amazing book that actually I'm providing for free if you buy a certain juicers from me on my website. It's a $40 hardcover book that is his book, Live Food, Live Bodies, that he wrote with his wife, Linda, which has like juice cleanses and juicing and actually a lot of raw food and also, you know, some plant-based recipes in there as well, which goes over his whole healing system that he came up with, which is like, you know, all his work, you know, definitely different than mine. But, you know, we're definitely on the same page. So I really respect and admire, you know, Jay a whole lot for, you know, because he was like the guy before Jack LaLanne. Jack LaLanne also made juicing popular. But then, you know, then later on, then the NutriBullet got really popular due to other, you know, influencers and whatnot. And, you know, the focus is away from juicing. And then this whole idea that, you know, blending and keeping everything in there is better than separating things out, which in some cases it could be better, but it also could be worse depending on what you specifically need and what you're looking for to get out of the food.
Yeah. And that Richard Anderson book you're talking about, was that, I've heard I think maybe I'm confused here, but I believe he's the guy that came up with the idea of mucoid plaque. Was that the book?
No. Well, he talked about mucoid plaque, but I'm sure he was like more later. I mean, Arnold Ehret talked about mucoid plaque, and there's probably some of you before Arnold Ehret talking about mucoid plaque, but he talked about mucoid plaque and getting it out of you. And I saw these rope things come out of me, and whether it was mucoid plaque or not, I still don't know to this day, but I'm glad that stuff is out of me. And I will tell you that regardless of what you want to call it, I had some amazing results after that cleanse nonetheless.
Nice. Yeah, so you did these cleanses. How did you actually start to transition to making it a lifestyle? Did you work it out yourself, or did you have a mentor, or did you meet with people, or how did that go for you?
Yeah, so in the early years, Ronnie, it was really difficult because there wasn't a lot of books. I mean, the main books I remember were like Ann Wigmore books, Gabriel Cousens books, and maybe like a few natural hygiene books, you know?
Yeah.
So I kind of like, between all those books, kind of read those and kind of like just started eating raw, you know? And back then when I started, you know, it's like, I could eat dates and nuts and be raw. So I ate a lot of like nut butter and date paste, you know, because it tasted good, but that did not get me the best health. So, you know, I think that's far too overeaten because you're just consuming, well, high sugar and high fat at the same time. But luckily in San Francisco, because that's where I was living in the San Francisco Bay Area at the time, there is one of the oldest living foods potlucks in the US, actually, the Living Foods, you know, support group. So I was lucky to be able to go down there. Now, most of the people down there did not do a high fruit diet. They did more of a, you know, higher vegetable, maybe higher fat diet. And then, you know, I met some people there like Dr. Rick Dina, a good friend to this day. You know, and then I also, you know, met other people like Dave Klein, which I know you knew. Mm-hmm. You know, then he got me involved more of the, you know, hygiene and like, you know, fruit side. So then I started like balancing between like the Wigmore style and, you know, the fruit style, and kind of came up with my own style that is, you know, unique to either of them, because I kind of take components of this one and components of this one and kind of mesh them. And even to this day, you know, I still have components of this, and even add more of my own things these days.
Amazing. Yeah. And so you got a lot of support from the potluck. That's great. How did you find did you find it easy to give up cooked foods and give up those things, or did you embrace it pretty quickly?
For me, it was about living or not living, Ronnie. So it was very easy, you know. Did I have some slip ups? Absolutely. Am I perfect? Absolutely not. You know, like I had a big breakup with a girlfriend, I had baked potatoes, but then I felt like, what did baked potatoes after you've been raw for, you know, a couple of years feel like? And I'll tell you what it felt like. When I ate them, it felt so good. Like, oh my God, these baked potatoes are so good. And then the issue was, I say this loosely because some people, if they're vegan, might get pissed at me. I will say for the next 3 days, I craved it. I don't want to say addicted because that word will get you in trouble, because it's not an addiction like I need some heroin. I need baked potatoes. But they were so good, I was craving them for like the next night. And then I would give in to my cravings and have it. And then I'd want it the next night. And then I just started eating baked potatoes instead of my raw food stuff. But then what else happened is that the next morning when I wake up out of bed, instead of waking up, opening my eyes and jumping out of bed and going full steam ahead like I would do back in the day. And I mean, nowadays I wake up a little bit slower because I want to meditate and relax, but that's a different discussion. You know, I would like feel lethargic and feel like, whoa, the energies got zapped out of me because I had all this heavy, condensed, you know, foods that it's harder to digest instead of my normal raw foods. And then the thing I had to do, Ronnie, was for 3 days straight, I had to just tell myself, you are not eating any baked potatoes. You are a raw foodist. This is your identity. You have to, I stopped it. And once I stopped it, then I no longer had those cravings or addiction, I say really loosely, you know, to those foods. So I could basically stick with raw because I inherently knew at that point that, wow, if baked potatoes, which are supposed to be inert, I mean, people go on baked potato diets, which, hey, I think baked potato diets are way better than junk food. But I think, you know, raw foods with more nutrient density are even healthier than, you know, russet baked potatoes, you know, that are heated too hot to create, you know, toxins in there in the heating process. So yeah, so then I'm just like, to me, it was like life or not life. And I experimented, you know, had a couple bouts when I had cooked stuff and I did not feel well. And like, here's the thing, I could try to teach somebody something and I could tell you the information, it could go in one ear, come out the other. But until you learn it internally, until you experience it yourself, until you make those mistakes and feel how you feel differently and want to accept those or not accept those, that's where changes come. So I really want people to learn from their own experiences. I won't even call them mistakes. They're your experiences. I ate cooked food and I felt like crap. Well, maybe you should eat more raw food. I'm not going to, I mean, each person needs to come up with that for themselves, and they're going to go through these trials and tribulations unless it's a life-threatening illness and you're going to like lose your life, you know, if you start eating, you know, processed garbage again. And I see that a lot. I see people go raw and they go on a juice cleanse and they go on a Gerson therapy. They get better. They're like, oh, I'm cancer free now. They start eating crap again. The cancer comes back and they're gone. They're not here today anymore. So it's like, I'm serious about what I'm doing. I'm doing it for my health primarily, not to say that I'm a raw foodist or 100% raw foods. You know, I'm here. I'm about 100% health for me to the best of my ability. Am I perfect? Absolutely not. But I try to do what I do to build my health up, build my microbiome, increase my phytonutrient levels, which unfortunately is not talked about so much in raw foods.
Yeah, so what I'm curious about, I suppose, is that you got going with your raw food diet. At what point, how quickly did you start to think to yourself, I need to start sharing this with other people? And how did you start that process back in the day?
Yeah, so I mean, it seriously, Ronnie, was about 3 years in when I'm like, I have to, because at first, you know, I'm just a noob. I can't be sharing it with people if I'm a noob. I mean, of course, when I was a noob, I was still sharing with people because I was like eating vegan, and I would go to like, you know, a Thanksgiving meal with my like family's friends and whatnot. Then I'd start spouting off on how they're eating, you know, dead turkey carcasses and all this stuff. And that's not healthy to do. So, I mean, I was sharing it with them, but they didn't really want to hear it. But then I think the main issue was that I started a website. You know, actually, I think the website started in 1998 is when I started my website, actually just living-foods, or I think it's rawfoods.com. To have information, which is pretty much still like it looked back then, because I haven't updated it, which is good because the information's like more solid than some of the newfangled stuff these days. And that's when I started sharing it. Then because of that, then I got asked to like speak at like the Portland Raw Foods, you know, festival they had way back in the day, in the late 90s, mid to late 90s. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm like a website guy behind the scenes. Like, I'm an introvert. I can't be giving public talks, but they're like, we'll let you in for free if you give a talk. And I'm like, shit, I'll give a talk. So, and I almost failed. I almost failed my speech class. Like, I think I got a D in college, but I was like scared as heck to give a speech about, you know, my story, because I might have my own healing story. So at that point, I was mostly sharing my story, and that's when I kind of came more into the public. And then I became slowly over time more comfortable with speaking in public, and then, you know, with the advent of, you know, the flip cam and making YouTube videos, and I'm like, you know what, you know, because I'm not a writer. I would love to write a book, but I'm just not a writer. I just can't. I don't have the patience. But I love to talk. I know a lot. I learn a lot, and I think I, you know, try to share things in a pretty good digestible format in you know, when I'm talking to people. So I'm, you know, glad to do that, and I still do that to this day. I really, you know, some people might like to watch a sporting event or go to a game or go to the bar and drink. I mean, actually, I like to turn on the camera and film a video. Actually, that's one of the most exciting things I get to do these days.
Yeah,
I know it could make a difference in people's lives, and plus, it challenges me to keep my brain young, because none of my videos are scripted. I don't know if people know that. Like, I don't like. I mean, they actually a juicer company hired me to be in an infomercial, and they had 2 professional actors on side by side to me to basically be the major hosts, and I was like the co-thing, and I could not remember my lines. I had to keep cutting. I would say something that they want, something near what they wanted in my own words, but I could not say their lines. I don't do lines, man.
What were those events like back in the day, like the Portland Raw Food Festival? And what was that one of the first events you went to, apart from the potluck?
Absolutely, yeah. The Portland Raw Foods Festivals back in the day were probably one of the first events that I went to, and that was, you know, there's a mix of people. They brought people from all different camps. You know, like Doug was there, and you know, there's people into more hygiene, you know, style, fruit based, and there's like more vegetable eaters and fat based people. I mean, I remember meeting Luke Corona at one of those way back in the day. I mean, and that dude, when I met him back in the day, he was inspiring. I mean, that dude's still inspiring today, you know, and he's doing a couple of things right, you know, and he eats, you know, definitely higher fat, you know, and all this kind of stuff. But yeah, I mean, that's an amazing dude right there.
Yeah, so there was, it seems like there was this kind of, back then there was maybe more people that were focused on like a higher fat nuts and seeds gourmet maybe kind of diet than there is so much now. Like, I mean, that still exists, especially raw food restaurants and stuff are still serving that kind of food.
Yeah, Ronnie, I would say back then it wasn't really about gourmet. I mean, my friend Nomi Shannon wrote The Raw Gourmet, which is one of the first kind of headed towards the gourmet side, and then Giuliano busted out and started, like, you know, adding in all these other higher fat ingredients. So, you know, if you kind of look at traditionally, like the Ann Wigmore style diet was probably the predominant style, you know, taught at Hippocrates and Ann Wigmore Institute, you know, that's like, you know, they do a lot of sprouted grains, you know, so I mean, it's always like, you know, we always forget, like, you could either eat fruit or fat, and it's not, you don't just have 2 options. You could do like sprouted grains, or you could do high vegetable diet, which is what I choose to do these days, you know? So it's like people are like brainwashed. You got to do fruit or you're fat. You're either fruit or fat. There's 2 other options, at least that I'm aware of, on a raw foods diet. And they could be a lot more challenging than fruit or fat, because fruit or fat are 2 of the easiest ones.
I'd like to ask you about your website as well, the Living Foods website. It was the initial one. Was that the first website you came up with? And
no, there's a one guy making another website, J.R. Ellis, Raw Times, I think was the website name. I don't even know if the dude's still doing it, but that was the first major website aside from some of the other smaller ones. But he was like the first. I'm like, wow, this dude has a raw food website. I got to make a website because this has changed my life, and I want to put together resources for people that want to do this. You know, because I was a web developer at that time, and I'm like, I had free time, and I've been passionate about raw foods and sharing the message, you know, since then. So yeah, that's as much as I remember about that, because I don't go to websites too. Well, I research, usually publish journals these days, and then I usually watch some YouTube videos myself.
Yeah, and how successful was that website? Did that get a lot of readers?
Oh, you know, back in the day, I mean, I never really looked at the statistics too much, but yeah, I mean, it was one of the largest websites for raw foods, you know, and it wasn't based around commercial, you know, so like later on, you know, Nature's First Law guys came, and then they didn't have a lot of information on there. They were just selling mostly products, whereas my site was basically based around having good information and connecting people together, you know, having a bulletin board forum to, you know, get people's questions answered and support them, you know, through their transition and journey. You know, nowadays it's pretty much outdated.
Did you have pretty good relationships with all the people that were in the raw food movement at that point, all different speakers and people like that?
Absolutely, Bronny. So I've always tried to be a centrist and, you know, not really, you know, take too many sides. So, I mean, I got along with everybody, I mean, for a while until something happened.
Yeah, well, maybe talk about that. So, you then, at what point did you start sort of doing the juicers and selling juicers and things like that? When did you get into that side of it?
Yeah, so that happened probably soon thereafter making my website. So I probably made my website, and then I was like, well, hey, my web business isn't doing that well. How can I make some more money? And I'm like, you know, hey, well, I could sell juicers. And I only came up with this because I found a local distributor that literally lived in the next city that was, you know, a wholesaler of juicers. So literally I could just go and buy juicers from them wholesale, and then I could turn around and sell them on my website for retail prices or less than retail prices. And I was like, and I could provide a service to people to like give them a better price than a juicer. And some of these juicers can be hard to find because they're not available at any, you know, like department store, you know.
Yeah.
Like, you just can't go down and buy a specialized juicer at like Walmart or something. They just got all the garbage stuff.
For people that are interested in juicing, I mean, I really think you probably are one of the people that know more about juicers than anyone else, and all kind of raw food kitchen equipment. And it's not just, you know, people could say, well, oh, you sell juicers as a business, fair enough, but you actually are really critical about juicers. You give great information on your videos. You don't just tell people buy this. You tell people, you know, this one maybe isn't as good. This cheaper one is actually better. You know, if you were just trying to make money, you would just maybe sell the expensive ones. But you're sometimes telling people this cheaper one's actually the better option. But
I mean, I just tell like it is, Ronnie. So like, I don't try to like sell them something they don't need. You know, I got to call a couple of people today that ordered really expensive juicers. My goal is my goal is to make sure they get the right juicer. And if they got to buy an expensive one to do that, I'm glad to sell it to them. But the other thing is, you know, I mean, I know I've tested more juicers probably than anybody on the planet, especially I have more videos comparing them than anybody on the planet. Guaranteed, nobody could keep up with me. And I just want people to get the right appliance and have the right information, because there's so much damn misinformation out there. Whether you're looking at the company's website, the companies say stuff that I don't believe to be true personally. You know, I don't like to single out companies and stuff. There's a lot of misinformation in raw foods and juicers and equipment when you're trying to buy something. And I just try to cut through the BS and tell like it is. Now, it's also my truth, but I also have a lot of experience with juicers. You know, people don't understand when I review a juicer, you know, it's like I've been juicing since 1995 when I started raw foods. I've juiced more produce than probably most people, for sure, use more juicers than most people. And it's important for me to people get the right machine for them. And, you know, people just want to simplify things. I mean, science is reductionism in its finest, where it's like, I just want to know the best vegetable to eat ever. You can't really say that, because every vegetable is different. Every fruit is different. It's like, if you want calories, dude, go for bananas. You know, if you want phytonutrients, go for some wild blueberries. It's just, wild blueberries aren't always the best. Dude, try to get your calories from wild blueberries. It can be very challenging, you know. I mean, you could, but so just kind of like that. So I just want people to get the right machine for their needs, and everybody's needs are exactly different.
And what would be like for someone that's looking for a juicer right now? What are the important things to look for? What are the some of the basic? What are the different types of juicer that are out there? What's the kind of basic information about juicing?
Yeah, so I mean, juices are categorized into two categories, like high speed or centrifugal or cold press. And cold press, that could leave it up to the definition, but I would just say a slow juicer. So it's number one, say you want to avoid a high speed juicer. They make less nutrition in terms of antioxidant content, although they are quite fast. Also, they're not as effective at juicing the most important things of juice, in my opinion, which are the leafy greens. People just don't eat enough leafy greens, whether you're a raw food, you know, and high fruit diet, or just a standard American person. You know, my goal is actually eat a lot of leafy greens. Actually, I just bought a bunch of juice, like, I don't know, it's 18 heads of romaine hearts the other day. So I drink lettuce juice, you know, to ramp up my greens, and I still have a salad at night, you know. So I think the biggest things are probably get a slow juicer or cold press juicer. But different kinds of cold press juicers will extract things differently. So it's like, you really have to look at what are you juicing, right? Some juicers won't juice fruits well. I know some people on some programs, some raw food camps might just want to do fruit juice cleanse. Now, I would never personally recommend that myself, but I know the juicers that'll do that the best. If you want one that's going to do that, my goal is to juice more greens. So I would I think auger juicers are best, like horizontal auger juicers are best for greens. If you want to do a more green-based and Wigmore Hippocrates style diet, but if you want to do like a centrist, like you want to juice some fruit sometimes, you want to juice some greens sometimes, then I'd recommend what I use. My favorite juicer is a vertical juicer, you know, and get a good brand because they all definitely vary. I've tested them all. You know, so they all kind of like juice greens and the fruits, depending on which way you want to swing that day.
And what do you say to the people that say that it's too much effort to do all the cleaning of the juicer?
I'd say, you know, how much is your health worth? And is your health worth 80 seconds?
Right.
The easiest juicer that I have to clean takes me 80 seconds. A juicer that's still not out quite yet that I can't promote is basically a juicer that uses a vacuum blending system that you literally rinse out a blender jar, which is no harder than a blender jar. And then you have a press cloth bag that I was about to throw out well, actually yesterday, that's my hands are a bit yellow. Because I was pressing out turmeric ginger made under vacuum, which is like nobody else in the world does this. And like I was gonna throw the bag out because like, man, all the crap's stuck in the bag. But I literally just took out the bag to my backyard, to my garden, took the hose and sprayed it off high pressure without even any scrubbing, and all the stuff blew off it. And I'm like, I can't throw this out because it's just too easy to clean, even though it's kind of getting all stained and kind of messed up. So it's like, it's really not that hard. You need to apply. How hard is it to go and find ripe fruit? That's probably a harder problem to have that I have than cleaning a juicer, you know, and some juicers are hard to clean, you know, and so don't get a juicer that's hard to clean. I have videos, you know, the easiest juicer to clean in the world takes me 80 seconds.
I believe as well, you've been looking at some new technology in blending. And what's happening with that? And can you reveal anything about what's happening with I think it's vacuum blending?
Right, yeah, so the vacuum blending technology is huge. Every raw foodist that blends up, especially if you're not juicing and you're blending because you believe blending is better, which I don't really argue about. I will say blending is different than juicing. You get different results and each one is good. I do blending and juicing, right? They're both very important. And if you are going to be doing either of those two, I want you guys to get the best appliance to do the job. What's your goal when blending? Your goal in blending is probably two things. You want to be able to chug down more stuff fast, concentrate it so it's easier. And the other thing I would hope you guys would feel is important, as I do, is that you want to maximize the nutritional quality in whatever you're eating, right? Whether that means going out and getting the highest quality fruit because it's sweeter, it has more nutrition, it's more tasty, or whether that means using an appliance that will maximize the amount of nutrients, and especially as proven by science, polyphenols and antioxidant vitamins by using what's called a vacuum blender. So unlike a traditional blender, because I know a lot of people have the Vitamix, unless you have a special attachment to it, is not a vacuum blender. Chris Kendall, bless you, Chris, I love you. He had a video on how to convert a Vitamix into a vacuum blender, and that's definitely an inexpensive way to do that, and that's better than not doing it. But I will tell you that I sell, you know, I'll be selling soon. It's not available, but I still sell right now many vacuum blenders. But the best one that's going to come out soon pulls more vacuum, twice as much vacuum as other vacuum blenders. What a vacuum is, basically, it's like a food saver. People know, like, if you want to store your produce longer, you can suck out the air out of the container, you know, and then store it without the oxygen, so the oxidation doesn't happen to the stored food, which could store some foods up to 5 times longer, so you prevent food waste. But when you blend things, it's even worse because in the blender, if you look down at it, it's a vortex. A vortex to me looks like a tornado. Tornadoes hit the US. I mean, I think there was one in Tennessee a couple months ago. It freaking blew up houses. I mean, seriously, people died in tornadoes because of the destructive force of basically the air and the oxidation. Well, in tornadoes, it's not oxidation, but in the blender, you're basically blowing open the cell walls by hitting the blade like 27,000 times a minute, right? And that's great because it makes a small particle size so you get better digestion, but at the same time, it is negatively affecting the antioxidants and polyphenols and other, you know, air sensitive, you know, nutrients in the smoothie. I mean, why do you make a smoothie with bananas, you know, and water, and then, you know, a couple minutes later it's turned brown? If you try to drink it 2 hours later, it tastes nasty. That's the oxidation that's happened. More importantly, the enzymes that are now reacting because you've blown them open, they're reacting and basically and making the nutrition lower over time. Whereas in a vacuum, you suck all all the excess oxygen out of the container before you blend, so that you preserve, as proven by science. You know, I think it was like, I was looking at the data, it was like 41% more polyphenols, you know, when you blend blueberries, for example. You know, and you know, to me, these are important. Why are polyphenols important? Number one, because the polyphenols have a beneficial effect in us, whether they are feeding our microbiome, whether they're giving antioxidants to us to resist free radical damage, or more importantly, most people don't know this, whether they are feeding your microbiome, you know, so that you could create, you know, like secondary metabolites, such as, you know, different kinds of acids and short chain fats to get absorbed, butyrate, you know, into our brains to prevent Alzheimer's. These nutrients are critical. In addition, besides having more nutrients, your smoothies are going to taste better. They're going to have a better texture. You know, they're going to have a different, better flavor, because the polyphenols and the phytonutrients have a flavor to them. It's like if you eat a fruit and it tastes like crap, there's no flavor to it, you know that's not a good fruit. It's not that nutritious. When you have a smoothie and you taste more nutrition in there, it's more nutritious for you. And you could simply do that by getting a different appliance, which is insane to me. And as soon as I learned about vacuum blenders, I could not buy one. They were not available in the US. They made them in Japan first. And I'm like, I need to make one. So I converted a NutriBullet for $20. I have a video on YouTube, how do I convert a NutriBullet for 20 bucks to make it a you know, very simple vacuum blender to minimize the oxidative damage. Now, it's nothing compared to the newest technology that's out there today, but I think any way you guys could vacuum, whether you want to convert your Vitamix, or whether you want to convert your NutriBullet, or whether you want to buy a cheap vacuum blender. I've had videos where I promote a $55 vacuum blender, and I'd rather have a $55 vacuum blender instead of a Vitamix, because I know the difference it makes. And people will not know the difference, Ronnie, until they taste the difference. Chris Kendall, I talked to him about it in a video, and I appreciate Chris because he went out there and he got one, he tried it, and I'm pretty sure he's a convert now too, because once you go vacuum, you won't go back.
Once you go back, you won't go back.
What? Yeah, like, thanks, Ronnie. Once you go back, you won't go back. You came up with that one. I never got that.
So that's amazing. I mean, the thing you're talking about with the oxidation, it really, you know, that's fascinating. And if it really does make smoothies taste better, then it sounds worth it. Totally sounds.
Have you
worth
had
it.
him?
Never tried vacuum blending.
Oh, Ronnie, come on. You got to get one, buddy.
Nice. I will. Thank you very much, John, for the recommendation. So that's amazing. I mean, there's so many things I want to talk to you about, John. Let's get to your diet a little bit. We'll go back to the kitchen appliances and stuff. So what is the John Kohler program, and what do you eat in a day? Does it change throughout the year? Is it seasonal? What's happening with your diet?
So it depends whether I'm traveling or not traveling, you know, and whether I'm home or not. You know, since COVID struck, you know, I've definitely dialed in my diet a bit more. So I have videos on my diet and what it looks like in a day, where actually I show exactly what I'm eating, because a lot of it's pre-made. So I have time to do other things in life besides just making food all day at each meal, which would be the best, but I don't have time for that. You know, and actually I put all my data, all the food I eat in a chronometer, so people can see that my diet that's high vegetables is not deficient and all this kind of crap. And actually, even in some cases, you know, I peak out on all the nutrients except like B12 and vitamin D, you know, which, you know, I'm sitting in here in the sun anyways, maybe the video is not so good because my back is backlit, but anyways. And then I take some B12, or maybe I'm getting it from my garden, but I do take a B12 supplement. So, I mean, Ronnie, what I eat is pretty simple. I eat a vegetable-based raw foods diet. I don't know many people that do a vegetable-based diet, because most people do either high fruit or high fat. I mean, I have a few friends that do, you know, like sprouted grains and whatnot for their main source of calories. That's also very rare. So, you know, and most people say that are on a high fruit diet, you can't eat enough vegetables to get enough calories in you. That's true if you eat them whole. See, I juice them. I cheat. Now you might think juicing's bad. You're removing some of the fiber. Juicing could keep, you know, a good percentage of the fiber. In the term of carrots and carrot juice, you're keeping about half the fiber. You're getting rid of the other half. But although you're losing some of the fiber, what are you gaining? You are gaining the fact that now your blood and your body can now assimilate and get those nutrients into your bloodstream and use less energy to get those into you faster. So why do healing protocols such as the Gerson Therapy and Hippocrates Institute that heal people from cancer use juices and not smoothies, especially when you're oxidizing those phytonutrients that are shown to be anti-cancer and all these things, right? So that's why I juice, you know. You could argue with me, but I'm not gonna, I mean, you guys could do whatever you want. I juice. And so I juice. I have 3 juices a day. At present time, I do a 4-ounce juice of turmeric, ginger, ginseng, rosemary that I grew, and lemon with some pepper mixed in and a little bit of MCT oil to get a higher uptake of the curcumin values. My parents instead choose to take a curcumin supplement, which I would rather have it in the juice. I think I got to be getting pretty incredible uptakes from that. And then it's made under vacuum. And that's why the tinges of my fingers are like yellow orange, because I was squeezing it out from a bag, which is a pain in the ass. I don't recommend anybody do that, but I'm crazy like that. And then so I do 4 ounces of that. And then the next juice, I do 32 ounces or 31 ounces, basically a liter's worth approximately of green juice. So this week it is basically 18 hearts of romaine hearts juiced in with 2 heads of celery. That's all organic from the store. And then for my garden, I use like about another dozen heads of red lettuce that are more nutritious than the standard romaine. I use the romaine hearts just because they add a lot of water content and bulk, but my lettuce is in there to add, you know, some of the different red compounds or, you know, anthocyanins plus more minerals than the store-bought stuff. And then I also add a big bunch of other kind of kale and broccoli greens and chard greens from my garden into my juice. So that's basically like 1 quart of juice is basically 4 cups of juice, and 1 cup of juice is approximately 4 pounds of vegetables, maybe 3 to 4 pounds depending. So basically, you know, oh, no, I'm sorry. No, 1 quart is 4 pounds. Yeah, 1 cup is 1 pound. So 1 cup of juice is about 1 pound of vegetables. So it's basically 4 pounds of vegetables I'm getting in 1 juice. Then my next juice has more calories than my first juice because my first juice is all greens, no sugar. I do this as my first meal of the day, which I don't usually even eat my first meal of the day until like noon because I'm like on a 12-hour fasting window. And then I do like my next juice is a more caloric dense juice with more phytonutrients. And that's in my root juice. So I had a picture on Instagram where I show the individual components, the main individual components of my juice, which is basically 8 different colors of food. So things from jicama, red carrots, yellow carrots, purple carrots, beets, red cabbage. I think I said jicama. I use a little bit of ginger, turmeric in there, maybe some apples. If I have a lot of apples that were cheap, because I get them for super cheap, organic sometimes, like 33 cents a pound or something. Sometimes I'll add pineapple if I have extra pineapples. Right now the pineapples suck, so I'm not adding. I'd rather add apples instead. So then I have like a root juice that's mostly based around roots that I would not otherwise eat. And that's the main thing. You know, as a raw foodist, how often do you guys eat beets? I mean, as a raw foodist that ate high fruit, maybe I'd have a beet on a salad once in a blue moon, but now I eat those basically every day. So I want to encourage people to have a wide diversity of foods. And if I do that, juicing makes it easy for me to do that. But if you could eat a beet every day, but then make sure you get a purple carrot. I mean, I really like that the juicing allows me to condense the amount of food I could eat to get more of them into me. So then that's another 4 pounds of vegetables, now root vegetables. So now I've had basically 8 pounds of mostly vegetables with a little bit of apple, maybe sometimes pineapple in there as the, you know, good, you know, half of almost not quite half of my calories, or good 1/3 of my calories for that day. And then later in the afternoon, we'll generally eat my salad meal. So that's another usually quart, which is about over 1.5 pounds. So like 1 pound, 12 ounces. I weighed it out once, but it's always varies of my vegetable based meal, which is like a big salad or a soup that's in a jar. And then I eat, you know, it's basically greens from my garden. Yesterday I was having my pepper soup. So it's based around peppers, sweet peppers that I juiced. And then I basically cut up a bunch of lettuce and put it in there with some other ingredients. And then I eat that. And then my last meal of the day is like, to enjoy some fruit meal. So, you know, yesterday I had like 5 mangoes and like some blueberries and some papaya. You know, every day is a little bit different because it depends on the availability and what I'm eating, you know. And so that's like my basic day. And then I've been adding in some select heat processed foods, you know, to increase my microbiome. So, you know, I have started to include, when I usually eat my salad meal in the daytime, I will add in a few things like, you know, some heat processed mushrooms, or I'll add in some heat processed baby purple potatoes or some heat processed artichokes, you know, to make my raw foods diet, in my opinion, better. Some people might argue with me, cooked foods are toxic. But, you know, this is my opinion. This is what I'm doing. I'm just here to share with people what I'm doing. I'm not going to tell you it's right or wrong, but this is what I believe to be, you know, a better way to eat, because I'm not limiting my diet as much. And, you know, if you guys look it up, artichokes, even if cooked, are still way higher in antioxidant content. They're one of the highest vegetables, even when they're cooked, especially compared to bananas. You know, so so I'm all about eating, you know, different types of fiber that are important for our microbiome, as proven by more emerging science, and then more importantly, the antioxidant content of my foods, which unfortunately most people focus on this calorie thing, which I'm not going to say calories are not important. They're absolutely important, but if I get enough phytonutrients, I will also get enough calories. And by simply changing out, you know, the different foods you eat, you could eat a lot more nutritious by getting more phytonutrients in the same given food. For example, you could just start eating wild blueberries instead of standard blueberries, and wild blueberries are like at least 4 times more nutritious, you know, than the standard ones.
So it's a green juice, a root juice, a big salad, or a soup meal, and a fruit meal is
That's
sort
the
of
basics. That's the basics of what I'm getting my calories and nutrients.
So what proportion of your diet are you growing yourself? Because obviously you've got a garden. Is a lot of that, the vegetables and the roots, is that all grown at home, or only a small amount of it?
I mean, if we're going by calories, it's a pittance, man, because I grow nutrient dense calories that are low calorie foods. So like basically the majority, aside from the romaine hearts that I juice because I don't have enough space to grow as many romaine hearts as I need. I wish I did, and if I will do that one day. But the romaine hearts are just in there for a filler liquid. But basically virtually all the greens that I eat, I mean, very few exceptions, I don't buy greens at the store. I will not buy greens at the store. Greens in the store are freaking nasty, and I don't know how anybody eats them personally. So it's like certain things I grow myself. Like all my greens I grow. Well, not all, but like very few. I mean, if I see a good deal on greens, I'll buy them just because I know I could just shove them through the juicer. And even if they're not the best quality, I could get some juice out of them and they're cheap. But otherwise, I just don't buy greens at the store because the quality is too bad. So I grow the most, I believe I grow the most important foods for me to have the highest level of health, which are the ones that expire very quickly. Roots, they respirate. You know, once you pick a food, it respirates. Roots actually have been shown in studies to keep their nutritional value fairly long after they've been harvested. Leafy greens, on the other hand, they degrade rather quickly. Some of the anti-cancer benefits may be lost even just, you know, a couple of days after it's harvested. You know, so for me, that's why I focus on the greens. I have some fruit trees too. Some days, you know, maybe like one day in the summer, I might grow everything that I ate that day. If I wanted to do that, I can. But also I find that limiting. You know, I think that people should eat as much local food as possible, homegrown food as possible. But also for me and my ideas and beliefs, it's also very important to get a variety. And if you're just eating what's available or grown in your local area, you're going to limit your varieties of what you're actually eating, in my opinion, which could be to your detriment, but it's to the advantage of the environment, and the environment thanks you.
Excellent, excellent. Thanks for explaining all that, John. So let's go to your garden a little bit. And when did you start feeling the importance of growing your own food, and how did all that journey start for you?
Yeah, so I think that I really, as a raw foodist personally, I was always trying to improve my diet and improve what I'm doing in my lifestyle. And I already had figured out I'm eating like the best diet, because this is the raw food diet. It's fruits and vegetables based, and I would buy organic foods at the grocery store, and I go to the farmer's market and support farmers directly, which is definitely the best. But then another fellow raw foodist, Don Weaver, enlightened me as to, you know, growing your own food using rock dust and doing things and adding things to the soil that literally farmers do not do to have higher quality food. I mean, I think actually it was at a Living Light Expo that I met Don at, well, that I saw Don on. He brought some of his homegrown food and I ate it. I'm like, oh my gosh, man, these are like the best, I don't know, whatever he brought, the best blank zucchinis or cucumbers that I ever had in my life. Why are they so good? He's like, man, John, I use rock dust and all this stuff. And he's like, you got to grow your own. it took me a couple times for him to tell me that until I tasted the stuff. It's like, once you taste it, you're going to be a believer. I tasted his stuff. I was a believer. I mean, once I get people to try a vacuum blended stuff, they're a believer, you know, but I tasted it. I'm like, you know what? Now I got to start growing my own food. So I'd been growing in the periphery of my yard. You know, at this point, well, for now, I've been probably growing about 20 years total, but I really got into growing it hardcore and literally tore up my front yard to grow my own food. I mean, I made videos back when I did it. I think it was like, I don't know, 11, 12 years ago now, when I really got into it, just wanted to grow food in a big way, besides just having a few token tomato plants or something like that, you know?
And I believe, I mean, I've seen videos of your garden. It's a pretty extensive garden. It looks like a big project. How many varieties, different species do you grow, and what are the highlights for you? What are the best things that come out of your garden?
That's a good question. So I don't, it's, to me, it's, I mean, I try to grow as many varieties as I can, especially more wild foods and things that money cannot buy. I mean, maybe I counted the varieties once in my life, but I just try not to even do that, because there's just so much. I try to cultivate diversity in my garden. So I have no idea. I'd say I grow hundreds of different kinds of varieties at any one given time. And probably the highlights for me are that it's just fresh, you know? I mean, it's like, I think the thing that really held true for me is once I started growing my own food and I harvested like a head of lettuce out of my garden. And I could eat one head of lettuce out of my garden that I grew in nutritious soil with good microbial action, and I would feel satisfied. It's like, wow, this lettuce is actually quite satisfying. But meanwhile, if I buy lettuce, I'd have to eat like 2 or 3 heads of lettuce to get that same level of satisfaction. Now, I don't know where that satisfaction comes from. Is it from the nutrients, or more importantly, is it from the biophotons or the life force, the prana, the chi? I don't know what you guys want to call it. I don't even know what it is to this date. The frequency, people into frequencies. I just feel a lot better when I cut it and eat it, and it has more vibrancy, energy. Of course, it tastes better as well. You know, these days, I just like, I'm excited about my Riccardia picroides, which is actually more familiar with you guys on your side of the world over there, because it's in the US. The seeds are very hard to find. It's actually from the Mediterranean, from Malta, and I think over in the UK they actually use it as a permaculture food. So I don't know if you ever had it or could get it, but basically they grow like dandelions, so they're like a weed, but they taste like lettuce. And so I grew it 2 years ago, and I'm sprouting some right now. So that's really exciting to me to have a food that literally is from the other side of the world, grows wild in Malta and the Mediterranean. And as a hardy plant, that's very more nutritious than more hybridized plants like, you know, romaine lettuce of these days, because it's more, you know, wild. And I encourage people to eat more wild foods. I came back from my California garden. I had things like miner's lettuce or Claytonia, which is what the miners came when they came to California to strike gold. They ate because it was just a wild weed in the hills. I have a lot of chickweed right now. You know, mallow is growing. You know, I really want to encourage people to like eat a diversity of foods and different foods than just what you could get at the grocery store. Learn about wild harvesting. Many wild harvested foods, you know, can be eaten raw. Some of them need to be heat processed to eat them. And then, my other favorite green right now is called shinguku, or edible chrysanthemum greens. If you don't grow them yourself, you could get those at many Asian markets. It's also called tung ho, I believe, in the Asian markets. And that just has such an amazing flavor. It's just so unique. It's unlike any other kale or lettuce. It's like one of my favorites. And that right now is going off in my garden in Las Vegas.
It's really interesting what you're saying. I mean, and the difference with the store-bought, because I've not experienced a lot of rock dust grown foods, to be honest. And I'm not sure. I've rarely eaten greens on their own and enjoyed them. There's only some that I've liked on their own. And like when you were talking about a lettuce juice, I think that I would struggle with pure lettuce juice on its own. But are you saying,
Ronnie, it's so good.
Are you saying that basically when these things are grown right, they taste much different, much better?
Correct. Absolutely, man. So like when you grow things just right, you could, number one, I mean, I've gotten kicked out of fruit festivals for showing the Brix values of things. I mean, I'm a fruit snob. I'm a vegetable snob too, actually, matter of fact, you know, and I just like to share my truth. I've also been doing this a long time too, you know, so, It's like a meter could test how good the quality is by showing the total dissolved, by basically showing the overall dissolved solids in the food. Dissolved solids could include minerals. It could also include sugars. And what people don't understand, Ronnie, because I've studied this, is that plants are chemical factories. They have what's called plant metabolites. Plant metabolites. So tomato could have up to 300 different plant metabolites. Metabolites that the plant makes, which are chemicals a plant makes out of thin air, literally, not exactly out of thin air, from the nutrients in the soil, from the sun, from the photosynthesis and all these things. But it won't always make 300 plant metabolites. These metabolites, we could call antioxidants, we could call them lycopene, we could call them vitamins. Whatever the plant's absorbing, those are the metabolites in the plants. What people fail to understand, you know, I have a soil scientist friend that I talked to that would explain all the chemistry of this. But basically, if the soil is nutritious, the plant makes more plant metabolites. For example, like just a simple analogy, if you eat a standard American diet or, you know, with like low nutrients, you're gonna have a weak immune system, right? We would probably pretty much accept that. If you eat, you know, fruits and vegetables, you're gonna have a higher immune system because you're feeding your body right. You know, your body could now do more processes because you're getting all the different vitamins and minerals and antioxidants and fibers that we need to have a healthy body. If you feed the plants NPK fertilizer and conventional food, for example, the metabolites that the plant could make based on 3 ingredients are this many. If you feed the plant 70 to 90 different trace minerals and the microbes that help get those into the plant, now you could have a lot more. These metabolites have flavors to us, right? They're also nutrition. So there's going to be soon, hopefully next year, the year after, it's in beta test stage. It's called a bionutrient meter. I mean, how many other raw foodists talk about bionutrient meters? This bionutrient meter, you can literally beam it out of food and it'll give a readout of how good, what quality the food is, if it's low quality or high quality. I mean, I'll be using it. Most people won't give a shit because they have a low, like they just go to the store and get a peach that's rock hard. Oh, that's a good peach. I'm like, that's a fucking shit peach. The good peach is right off my tree, it drops in my hand because it's freaking juicy ripe and I'm eating it and it's just so sweet and dripping. So it's like, I'm with that with greens. I'm with that with everything, man. And some people are not discerning because they don't understand the science, or they don't have, maybe they're not a super taster and they can't taste the difference. But I tell you, I'm serious. Like the science proves it. You know, my taste buds prove it. The bionutrient meter that's going to come out, that's in beta testing stage right now, will also prove it. You know, and it's so these small. Once again, Ronnie, I'm not the standard raw foodist. I've been trying to dial up and improve what I've been doing. I don't know anybody that takes it to the level that I do, using the best appliances, using the best soil practices. You know, I mean, I'm crazy. If you know anybody else does what I do, let me know because I want to talk to them and pick their brain.
Yeah, you're definitely.
I wish I didn't have to do all this stuff, and it makes me an outlier, which I'm fine with. I'm fine with being an outlier and being weird. And John Kohler does all that weird stuff. I'm not going to watch his videos. And you know, somebody that's pretty and blonde or brunette and, you know, wears a bikini all the time gets all these views with maybe not the best information, in my opinion, but you know, whatever.
So you touched upon a subject I hope you're happy to, we'll talk a little bit about, hopefully, if you're okay with that. The bricks meter, you made a video. Now, you were a big part of the Woodstock Fruit Festival, and I remember the first time I went, 2012, I think it was the first year you went as well, and people were excited to see you there. And you made some great videos there, and you were a big part of the whole thing. And you made this video a couple of weeks before the festival. It might have come across negatively, and I believe you were kind of uninvited to go. And what all happened there? What do you think was the? Do you think that things were interpreted the wrong way, or what do you think?
Well, I have my own opinion about things. I'm quite opinionated, and people that run that festival or the person that runs that festival is also quite opinionated as well, which is good. You know, it's good to be opinionated about things and stuff. But basically, you know, I had filmed the video the prior year, and unfortunately, I did not release it until a couple weeks before the event to try to, I mean, my main goal, Ronnie, was to drum up business for the event to get more people there. I mean, my choice of titles of the video title was not the best.
Okay, sorry, a little bit of technical difficulties there. We're talking about the situation with the Woodstock Fruit Festival. So, what happened there, John, and what's your opinion about all that?
Well, what happened there was that I released a video with maybe not the best choice in titles that I will admit to. And my sole goal with that video was to get more people to Woodstock. Period. Done deal. I can't believe we're rehashing this, I don't know, 5 years later or something, which sucks. My goal was to promote them, to get more people there, negative titles, get more clicks. I wanted to get people clicks so that they'd watch the video, so that they would go to the Woodstock Fruit Festival. Now, unfortunately, it was taken by the person in charge of Woodstock as a negative video and a smear campaign to smear him or something. And so then he basically voided our contract that we had. I had previously bought tickets to fly to New York that he said he would pay for. He said he would pay me the money, and I said, no, I'll just get it when I get there. And I should have took the money, because then he ended up never paying me. In addition, he had agreed to pay me commissions on people that I referred, which he never paid me any commissions on the people that I referred there. Furthermore, he said that if you want to come, you have to pay for your admission. We're not going to give you a free admission anymore, and you're not speaking. You know, I don't think that was right to do that to me at the last minute. Personally, I would hope that people would see the disjustice in that, despite whether you believe my video was, you know, good or not good about Woodstock. It was there to help build the community. But more importantly, I tell the truth. And this is what got me in trouble. I told the truth. Why did I tell the truth? Because I want people to know the quality of the fruit that they're going to get when they go spend their $1,500 or $1,700, however much it costs. That's a lot of money to a lot of people. And, you know, I felt that when I went there, the quality of the food that I ate went down, like not down a little bit, down by a lot. Now, I grow my own food, so that might not be the fairest comparison, but even so, when I go to buy food on my own, you know, I get pretty good quality stuff. You know, I'm pretty picky when I buy stuff. But the way that they shop at Woodstock, in my personal opinion, is that they just, you know, get whatever's sent to them. They don't check the quality before they bring it in. You would think they'd be able to at least have a guy taste test this whole pallet before they commit to buying it, so that the people there get good stuff. Now, the other thing I'm gonna say is this: most people don't know good quality stuff if it hit them in the freaking face. So most people are gonna be happy with the quality that just shows up anyways, because that's the quality they would get at the supermarket anyways. So this is not even necessarily a Woodstock issue. This is a whole supply chain issue with the food system and the way it's set up and the way food is sourced. You know, so I mean that's how I'd sum it up, Ronnie. And it's not like I just hit the guy in charge of Woodstock blindside, because I've been telling him for the last, every year I come, I'm like, Michael, here's some ways we can increase the fruit quality and the food quality and have more organic, to, you know, get things and at least minimally label them if they're going to be irradiated, to let people have the choice to eat irradiated food or not, because they would put out irradiated food without even labeling it and telling people, which I personally think is wrong. I mean, everybody wants GMO labeling laws. Why not have irradiated food labeling laws? Some people into raw foods are not just doing it to run around and do marathons, which is great. I think that's more power to you if you want to do marathons. But some people do it for healing, for their health, because they almost lost their life like I did. And they're more serious about eating organic, avoiding things like irradiated food, right? And having higher fruit quality and higher food quantity, more organics that can increase your nutrient uptake, so that people can get healthier and get better results than not.
I hear you, John, and I think it was an unfortunate situation, and it's a shame that you're not at the event. I'll just add in, from having attended the event over the last few years and everything, I always feel like the food, this is my experience, and I don't have John's experience with the quality of the food. I feel like the food's been really good quality, at least from my memory in the last few years, and I don't want anyone to decide not to go just because they think all the food's going to be tasteless. Like, I think they are making improvements all the time, and just from my opinion, I've been really satisfied. I mean, the first couple of years I went, I think they did. They had a lot of unripe fruit and a limited varieties of stuff, but they've really made just my own piece. I just want people to try it out for themselves and see what they feel about it. But let me ask you, you've done a lot of videos about raw food restaurants and locations and different things. Some of the centres, I think maybe you've made some videos on these places. Where do you think are the best, or what in your opinion are like some of the best restaurants, some of the best raw food centres, places for people to go and experience raw food? What would be your opinion on that?
Right. So just going back to the Woodstock, Ronnie. So number one, I want to say that, I believe my video did spark change in Woodstock, and they did up their game after my video came out. So despite me not being there, I'm glad the quality has improved. And once again, I do not want to dissuade people from going to Woodstock. The main reason that you should go to Woodstock is not to experience the fruit or the vegetables that they are serving. The main reason you should go to Woodstock is for the community. That is overwhelmingly the most important thing. And, and most people that go, unless you're John Kohler, are probably gonna be quite happy. And if actually I went today, I'd probably be quite happy. And here's the thing, Ronnie, I was never unhappy with the food, but once again, my lifestyle has been all about improving, so my belief is that you should always try to improve no matter what you're doing, man. If you are a long distance runner, you want to improve by 0.5 seconds, because that might be the difference between winning or losing, right? And for me and my raw foods diet style, I'm always trying to improve, and I would like to see others improve also, and not just remain constant, because, if you're going constant, that means you're not improving. That means you're probably losing and you're going downhill. So nonetheless, I want to encourage people to go to Woodstock. The food quality is going to be great. It's improved since I made that video, and I'm a stickler about food quality. And if I went, I'd probably be happy anyways, because it's more to me about, the camaraderie and the community there. All right. So done with that. So on to the restaurants and the raw food, retreats or places to go. It's quite unfortunate that in my view, there's like no place I would really that like conforms to my style diet. I mean, there's places that do like maybe higher fruits or like more of a Wigmore style diet, or green based diet. Hippocrates in Florida, they're kind of expensive. I kind of like the Ann Wigmore Institute. They do more of a green kind of like bland diet. And there's like Optimum Health in San Diego, which actually I probably wouldn't go there. I mean, they have really, I would call this food austere. that's probably being nice. And then Hippocrates, I don't know. I like Ann Wigmore because it's just pretty clean stuff, but you're not going to get a lot of fruit there. It depends what people are looking for. I mean, I like that because that's a good detox cleanse and it's quite affordable. I've, a friend that works there, and I mean, they're just solid. I mean, some of their information, they're stuck in their mindset and they don't want to like improve and change, although that's happening slowly. They at least they got a vacuum blender and they're using that in the kitchen now, unlike other places. They realize the value of that.
What about the restaurants? I mean, even just for pure pleasure of a delicious raw food meal, like not thinking about the cleansing and all that. What are your opinions of some of the best places you've been?
Well, I've only mostly been in the U.S., Ronnie. I hope to travel out the U.S. more, but a lot of raw food restaurants, in my views, they're kind of like more old school and they don't really, take the cuisine to the next level. So my favorite probably is number one in Los Angeles. It's called Living and Wild and Living Foods. And that's in downtown LA. That's probably my favorite place because, I mean, it's raw. I'm not going to say it's like super healthy, but it's super delicious. It tastes good. And they're doing like next level stuff that you don't see at other places, man. So I like to go, if I go to LA, always go there for one meal. I think the other thing I think is that, nobody's going to make food as healthy as you can make yourself, because their goal, I have different goals. My goal is my food has to taste good and taste great, but also be very high nutrition. And this is something that's not really, I don't think, seen it too much in raw foods, because I really try to do things that maybe extra steps and things that people wouldn't do. And then actually there's a really cool restaurant, I think it was like in Tampa, Florida area. I forget the name. I have a video on it, but that place was cool because they just really just did it right. They were just legit.
Excellent.
I'd have to look at the video. Yeah.
And what about like are there some locations that you've been that have been really great for produce, or even maybe some farms or anything that you've been able to, farm stands, fruit shops, any places you've been that have been particularly good?
For what do you mean? For buying stuff or
Yeah, for produce,
like cheap produce or good quality?
just good quality, just the best tasting stuff you found.
Yeah, well, the best tasting stuff is usually in my garden. You know, it's like it's random because like a lot of farmers are not focused around quality, you know. So I mean, sometimes you'll get lucky and sometimes you won't. I mean, I think going farm direct, I mean, I visit farms in my local area where you could do pick or just buy right from the farmer, and that's the best I could get. And I would encourage people to do that, you know, and find farms near you. I wouldn't say go to this place to get the best stuff, you know. I mean, I really like Hawaii a lot. You know, Hawaii, they have a lot of varieties, you know, things growing over there, and you're always bound to find something pretty good. I mean, that's one of my favorite vacation spots. You know, hopefully maybe I'll be going next month. I haven't been traveling a lot due to COVID, but I'm starting to travel again. But yeah, I mean, I always find good stuff wherever I go. I always go to farmers markets and just visit farmers. You know, you'll find, I mean, you know, always buy a little bit and you can taste test before you buy a lot. I can't really say that any one space, you know, stuck out more than others. Nothing's really ever blown me away, but I'm hard to blow away too. So, you know, I don't know.
Amazing. Yeah, thank you. So if people want to find out more about you, John, where should they go? What's the best places to find out more from you?
Yeah, so probably a lot of people watching this would probably likely to go tookraw.com, which is my OK Raw YouTube channel, where I have over 600 videos talking about, you know, my raw food style diet and interviewing friends and people that have been doing this for a long time, plus giving my, you know, history and take and doing restaurant reviews when I start to travel again and all this kind of stuff, and a bit different take on raw foods than you might hear, well, you're going to hear on other channels. And then number 2, Growing Your Greens, which is my YouTube channel, over 1,600 videos on that channel, or 1,500, where I teach people how to grow their own food, which is always the best. You know, grow your own food however you guys can, whether you want to grow sprouts and microgreens because you have an outdoor space, or whether you want to convert your whole backyard or front yard if you live in a standard American tract home, or whether you have a farmland and you want to convert that. I visit farms and I grow my own yard, which is a small space. Then I also have another channel if they're in the US, Discount Juicers, where I sell the juicers and appliances that allow you to get more fruits and vegetables in you. And I have a YouTube channel associated with that where I compare and contrast all the different major brands so that you guys could learn the truth about juicing.
Excellent. And just before we finish off, what would be some of your best advice for people that are beginning on this path?
I think the most important advice for me is start slowly. I know some people want you to transition overnight, and some people might not agree with my opinion on this, but you know, my opinion is you want to build slowly and surely on your foundation of eating fresh fruits and fresh vegetables in the largest quantity as possible. If you go 100% overnight and then you do it for a week, that's great, but then you get the cravings for cooked food or non-vegan food or whatever, and then you go back to that, and then you just never go to raw foods again. You know, to me, it's much more sustainable to, you know, get a little bit of raw foods in every day consistently over the next year than go raw for a week and then go back to eating crap, you know, for the rest of your life. You know, so that's why actually juicing is my favorite way to do that, because juicing makes it easy. It allows you to concentrate the most needed plants on the planet, which are the vegetables, especially leafy green vegetables, more importantly, into a smaller amount. And then, you know, and so then maybe you don't have to even eat salad if you don't want to. I mean, I still eat a salad, but, you know, I know a lot of people do a lot of fruit. At least if you're going to do a lot of fruit, I would recommend people do a good green juice, or maybe even a root juice like I do, and then do some fruit. You know, at least you're going to get a lot of good phytonutrients and nutrients in of vegetables that you would not otherwise eat.
Excellent, John. And before we finish off, is there anything we've not discussed that you would like to share about or talk more about?
You know, I think the only thing that I really like to talk a little bit more about, Ronnie, is that I really want to encourage people to eat a diversity of foods. This is something that's really not often talked about in raw foods, you know.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, I know some people do, like I know Doug, you know, he talks about eating diversity, but then in practice, people don't eat a lot of diversity. So I think it's very important to, you know, increase your diversity of foods. I mean, people get in habits. We're a creature of a habit. You go to the store every week, you buy bananas and you buy oranges and you buy romaine hearts and you buy this and that, and that's it. And then, but in the produce section in most modern grocery stores, there's like over 100 different kinds of produce items. I would encourage and challenge each one of the listeners or the viewers today to go out and buy that one new item that you never bought before. Buy some burdock root and juice it. Buy some celeriac, which is the celery root, and juice it. Buy a jicama if you never bought a jicama before. Jicama is one of my favorite vegetables, very high in inulin, good for our microbiota. But buy one extra different kind of produce item, whether even it might be a fruit, right? You don't normally buy those yellow dragon fruits because they're expensive. You always get these other ones. Get one yellow dragon fruit one time, you know, and try that different kind of apple, because you always get the Fuji's because they're the sweetest. But hey, you know, Granny Smiths are also actually one of the higher nutrient apples, as is actually the Fuji's. Because even within, don't get Golden Delicious, right? Golden Delicious apples aren't that as nutritious in terms of antioxidants as compared to Granny Smith or Fuji. So just by, I mean, this is all the tweaks that I do that nobody really understands, that like just by changing the variety of food you're eating could drastically increase your health benefit of that, even though the apples look the same, just the variety is different. The other thing is each variety, and if you eat every different kind of food has different kinds of fiber. We classify them into two main types, you know, soluble and insoluble, but there's all these other kinds of fiber, you know, polysaccharides. I was juicing aloe vera or blended up aloe vera last week, and there's polysaccharides, which are different polysaccharides and, once again, plant compounds or plant metabolites that, you know, that are healthy for our microbiome. And I think as my studies go on, I'm learning more about microbiome. It's even more evident to me that we need to really expand the varieties of foods and the kinds of foods and the types of foods we're eating to even be healthier than we are today.
Thank you so much, John. Amazing information. I think everyone can feel your enthusiasm. I'm just before we finish off, I'm just gonna let everyone know this is the Love Fruit podcast. You can find it on YouTube, Spotify, iTunes, all sorts of podcast platforms. Feel free to share this with people that you think it might be important to. We'd love you to do that. Give us a rate it or give us a comment, however you can communicate with us, and you can email info@fruitfest.co.uk if you've got any questions, suggestions, anything else. You can join our newsletter to get notifications about the next podcast at fruitfest.co.uk. And so we want to thank you for listening and watching. John, any last words of wisdom before we finish?
I mean, that's pretty much it. I want, you know, people to eat more fruits and vegetables. And even if you're vegan, I want you guys to get rid of that vegan processed food. I'm highly against vegan processed food and, you know, eating animals personally. Although I'll never tell you guys what to do, but we really just need to get back to eating the basics. Fruits and vegetables should be the dominant part of our diet. And, you know, in their fresh, whole, ripe, raw, natural state as possible, minimally processed and highest quality. I'm a stickler for the quality. You'll remember that about me.
Thank you so much for joining us, John. Thank you everyone for listening. And as John would always say, eat more fruits and vegetables. They're the best.